In the quiet town of Elmsford, where mornings arrived gently and evenings settled slowly, lived a young man named Ayaan. From the outside, his life looked ordinary. Average house, average education, average dreams. But inside Ayaan's mind, there was a constant storm. He craved success, respect, and a meaningful life. Yet every day slipped through his fingers like sand. Ayaan was convinced that motivation was the key. He spent hours watching motivational videos, scrolling through inspiring quotes, and fantasizing about a future where everything would magically fall into place. Every single night, he'd promise himself, tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will change. Tomorrow, I will finally focus. But as you might guess, tomorrow never came. He'd wake up late, and his phone was always the first thing he touched. Hours would just vanish into the endless scroll of social media. The important tasks were always postponed. His biggest goals remained distant and unfinished. And when night fell, a wave of guilt would wash over him, replacing the hope he'd felt the night before. This destructive cycle repeated itself, day after day. Ayaan often blamed his circumstances, a lack of opportunities, unsupportive people around him, or just plain bad luck. But deep down, in a place he didn't like to look, he knew the truth. His mind was completely undisciplined. One early morning, after another sleepless night filled with regret and anxiety, Ayaan sat by his window, just watching the sun rise. He noticed how the world outside was so disciplined. The sun rose right on time. The birds followed their daily routine. Nature itself obeyed an unspoken order. It's only the human mind, he thought, that wanders so endlessly. That morning marked the beginning of a journey not toward some overnight success, but toward complete focus and mental discipline, all built through a simple daily routine. Ayaan's turning point came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while walking through a nearby park to escape his own chaotic thoughts, he noticed an elderly man practicing Tai Chi under a large banyan tree. The man's movements were slow, precise, and deeply focused. He repeated the same motions again and again, moving as if nothing else in the world existed. Curious, Ayaan found himself drawn to the park the next day, and the next. The old man was always there at the exact same time, performing the exact same routine with the same calm, unwavering intensity. Finally, Ayaan gathered his courage and approached him. "Sir?" he asked. "Why do you do the same movements every single day? Don't you ever get bored?" The old man stopped and smiled gently. "Boredom," he said, his voice calm and wise, "is the result of an undisciplined mind." He introduced himself as Mr. Rahim, a retired teacher. Over the next few weeks, Ayaan began visiting him regularly. Their conversations started to slowly reshape Ayaan's entire understanding of success. Mr. Rahim explained, "Young man, people think focus is about forcing the mind to do something. It is not. Focus is about training the mind through routine, the same way muscles are trained through repetition." Ayaan finally opened up and admitted his struggles, his constant distractions, all the broken promises he made to himself, and his total lack of discipline. Mr. Rahim listened patiently, without judgment, and then said something that struck Ayaan to his very core. "Your problem is not a lack of talent or intelligence. Your problem is that your mind is free when it should be disciplined, and disciplined when it should be at rest." That day, Mr. Rahim gave Ayaan a simple challenge. It wasn't a grand plan or a complex strategy. He just said, "Wake up at the same time every day, no matter how you feel." Ayaan laughed nervously. "That's it?" he asked. "That's everything," Mr. Rahim replied with a knowing look. The first week was pure agony. Ayaan's alarm rang at 5:30 a.m., and every cell in his body screamed in resistance. His mind started its usual arguments. Just 5 more minutes. It won't hurt. But for the very first time, he didn't negotiate with his thoughts. He just stood up. He didn't feel motivated. He didn't feel inspired. He felt tired. But he followed the routine. Slowly, his mornings began to change. They became quieter, with fewer distractions. Ayaan started reading for 30 minutes each day. Then he added some light exercise. Then he started planning his day on paper before the chaos could begin. The routine was incredibly simple, but the effect was profoundly powerful. Discipline was starting to do what motivation never could. As the weeks turned into months, Ayaan noticed something unusual. His mind was calmer. Tasks that once felt completely overwhelming now seemed manageable. His ability to focus improved, not because his life magically became easier, but because his mind was becoming stronger. One evening, feeling frustrated after failing at a task, Ayaan complained to Mr. Rahim. "I still lose focus sometimes," he said, disappointed. "I still fail." Mr. Rahim just nodded. "Discipline does not eliminate failure," he sighed wisely. "It teaches you how to return to your focus faster." That night Ayaan reflected on those words. He finally realized that discipline wasn't about achieving perfection, it was about consistency. It was about showing up again and again. He began applying this principle to every part of his life. Eating at fixed times, limiting his phone usage, working in focused time blocks, and going to sleep at a consistent hour. Of course, there were days he failed. There were days he slipped back into his old, comfortable habits. But something fundamental had changed within him. He no longer quit on himself. He simply returned to his routine the very next day, without all the self-hatred and guilt months beset. The people around Ayaan started to notice the transformation. His work improved dramatically. His confidence grew, not the loud, boastful kind, but a quiet, grounded confidence that came from within. He spoke less, but acted more. One day, he received an opportunity he had once only dreamed of. But this time, instead of feeling a mix of excitement and crippling fear, he just felt calm, felt ready. His mind was prepared. He had come to understand a powerful truth. Focus is not built in rare moments of inspiration. It is forged in the ordinary days, through disciplined, repeated routines. Years later, Ayaan found himself standing where Mr. Rahim once stood, under that same banyan tree in the park. The old teacher had since passed away, but his timeless lessons lived on. A young boy, looking lost and confused, approached Ayaan one morning and asked, "Sir, how do I stay focused? I really want to be successful." Ayaan smiled, remembering his own journey. He replied, "Discipline your mornings, and your mind will follow." He explained that success isn't about doing extraordinary things once in a while. It's about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well every single day. Ayaan finally understood that the mind is like a wild horse. Motivation might give you a thrilling ride for a short distance, but it's discipline that builds the reliable path that can walk on forever. The greatest victory of his life wasn't the wealth, the fame, or the recognition. He eventually earned it, was achieving control over his own mind.